Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another Heritage Escrow speaker series. Today, we are joined by litigation consultant Robert Brand for a part 2 of Staying Out of Court. Just so you all know, this will be recorded, so if you do need a copy of the recording and presentation, please reach out to your sales rep afterwards, and we would be happy to send that over to you. My name is Brianna Nadeau, and I represent the Carlsbad branch. And work with escrow officers Holly Burt, Anela Miyashiro Lindo, and Rana Del Rosario. I am also joined by my colleagues, Jara Payne and John Curry. Good morning, Jara.
Good morning, everyone. Hi, I'm Jara Payne, Heritage Escrow, Rancho Santa Fe. I work here with Stephanie Clark and Kristen Bramble. I did want to let you guys know that we will be sending out webinar notes. So everybody that's in attendance, you will get a copy of the recorded presentation with some webinar notes. So keep an eye out in your inbox for that. John.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm John Curry. I'm the sales executive at our Balboa Park branch. I have the pleasure of representing our bulk escrow officer, Debbie Howe, as well as our branch manager and senior escrow officer, Donna Hamilton. One thing I do want to throw out there is I know from last time we had Robert, there's going to be a lot of questions. If you can, and you have it on your screen, please put them in the Q&A at the bottom. It's just a lot easier to keep track of them. And then in that way we can do a better job of making sure we get them answered for you.
Thank you, John. Good morning, Robert. I will let you take it away.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to share my screen here so I can do the PowerPoint. Okay, I think I can do it now. Yeah, here we are. So this will just take 1 second or 2 seconds, get it into position here. And do that. And can you see that okay?
Yeah, and I know last time there was a little bit of problem with some people being able to see. So if you guys are having any part of the screen cut off, go to your view options and you can change it from fit to the window to original size or smaller, and it'll get everything in the box.
Okay, so let's go. And I did put my email address, name and email address in the chat area. So good morning, everybody. My name is Robert Brand. I talk about staying out of court. I cannot help you with staying out of jail. That's a whole other topic. But in case you've heard of me or seen me before, there'll be a little bit of repetition. And if you were at the event that we did about a year ago, I have about 35 hours of completely non-repeating disclosure strategy information. So I try to pick and choose. So I have some new information for you if you've heard me before. But big percentage, and it applies only to California. No other state has this problem that we do. But about 9 out of 10 lawsuits against residential agents here in California involve disclosure issues. And the typical scenario is the buyers move in. They find something or some things that they don't like about the home. I don't mean feature-wise. I mean, like, they think that there's something wrong with the roof. Maybe there's a mold thing or foundation thing. And in most other states, people tend to try to fix it themselves or get it fixed. Here, one of the first thoughts is, I need to get an attorney. So this is a really important topic in terms of staying out of court. A lot of you know who Gov Hutchison is. He is the grand guru of anything regarding real estate. Of course, he's an attorney with CAR and a big company real estate firm up in Sacramento. When there's not a pandemic, put he and I together. I always like to say I'm his warm-up act, but if you ever have a technical, not on my topic, although we could probably cover that too, but I think everybody or most of you listening know who Gov is. And whenever he comes to town for one of the associations of realtors, it's really worth seeing him. And then, as mentioned, I will get some seminar notes over to Jara as soon as we're done here. I always like to have this little disclaimer here, and that is that there are some differences in disclosure techniques I hate to tell you how long I've been doing this, but it's 32 years. And I speak on this topic more than anybody in California. However, there are a few companies that do things a little bit different, but it's pretty broad spread in terms of strategies, what strategies to use to avoid litigation, but it won't apply 100%. So just real quickly on the visual inspection, and I'm going to assume that everybody listening, all the real estate agents listening, actually use the AVID form. It's not a mandatory form or statutory form. The transfer disclosure statement, or TDS, or TDS form, if you want to call it that, is statutory. The AVID is not, but I would guess that about at least 95% of agents in California use it. So whenever I refer to it, I would refer to it as like the form itself, like the paper form, but you can apply that to having the form on your laptop, on your phone. But just for my examples, I'll go with the good old fashioned piece of paper. But it does say that we do a visual inspection. So a question that comes up sometimes is are those the only things we should disclose, things that we can actually look at? The answer to that is actually no. Now, again, this has been out a long time and they've never changed the term visual inspection. But in the California courtrooms statewide, visual inspection has basically morphed into meaning any sensory perception. You don't have to be able to actually look at something to disclose it. If you notice it in any way you notice it and you think it might be problematic or disclosure worthy, then you would want to disclose it. So two quick examples. Let's say you're at a two-story property, you're doing your AVID thing, the visual inspection, and you're upstairs, you go into the bedrooms and bathrooms, and as you traverse the hallway upstairs, you get the impression that the floor might be just a little bit uneven. You don't always notice it, but you have a couple of times. So you're done upstairs, ready to go downstairs to finish up. Before you do, you look at the hallway and you think, it looks okay to me. It looks like it's flat, but you have noticed something. It's a sensory perception. So it's a good idea to disclose it, even though you can't visually see it, perceive it that way. So I don't know, maybe a lightweight disclosure like upstairs hallway floor appears to have some unevenness. When the buyers move in, if either it doesn't bother them or they don't even notice, that disclosure doesn't make any difference. But if they move in and they say, something's wrong, I wasn't told about it, and then they look at the AVID and they go, oh, my agent or the other agent disclosed it, and I should have read this and all that, then it can be a great protection for you. Let's say you're downstairs and it could be anywhere, but let's say in the family room, there's just an overpowering odor in that area. And let's say it's kind of like a musty smell, but it's very pervasive. And you're thinking, even when the sellers move out and the place hopefully gets cleaned up, this is so strong, it's going to be lingering on after all that cleanup. And most buyers are going to notice it and won't like it. So you think, well, it's not visual. You don't know what it's from. It's not a visual issue. It's a sensory, sense of smell. So you would want to make a disclosure, even though you can't see it. Now, exactly you're not going to write down, this part of the house really stinks or something like that. You got to have something a little bit better. In the notes, one of the suggestions I make would be terms like apparent odor, let's say family room, apparent odor noted in family room, obvious odor noted. You're kind of staying generic. You never want to say musty or mildew. They are too close to the word mold, which you never want to say out loud, never want to write down. It's a environmental engineer's term. It's not ours. So you can disclose a strong smell in the home without ever mentioning the descriptive words. So any sensory perception, doesn't make any difference which one. And on that AVID, as you go room to room, every section, for the bedrooms, the living room, the kitchen, whatever, if you're going to make a comment, and I'll go into what if you can't find anything wrong at all, what do you do? But if you're making a comment, that comment needs to be either a defect or a red flag. Nothing other than that. You probably know that, but just a couple of quick definitions. They're both very easy. The second one is a little more challenging, but it's still easy. Like, let's say you're in the kitchen and the window's broken. There's one window in the kitchen and it's cracked, it's broken. You probably know this, but it does get written wrong a lot. The proper disclosure, in my opinion, would be cracked window, broken window. Nothing about, it's not a big crack, small crack. It's not in the upper right corner. It's not from the baseball or the rock or the frisbee. Cracked window, completely done with that disclosure. No background, no descriptive terms. It's not big, it's not small. The buyers really only need to know that the window's cracked in case they happen to miss it. It may not bother them, but in this market, they're probably not going to make any requests, but nonetheless. The other category, and the only other one, is red flag. Now, let's say that ceiling stain was a bit bigger than what you have in the picture. I basically need just to get a bigger picture here. But anyway, you look up there and you think, well, I got to disclose that. And let's say there's a window on the wall below it, so it's easy to identify, like, so stain ceiling above window or something. But a lot of agents would write down there's like a large water stain. Well, we don't want to use large. That's debatable. And stains can occur from a lot of things other than water. There could be a rodent issue. They could be storing white wine up there and, one of the bottles broke. Don't know. I actually don't even care. So we want to make sure our disclosures are not overly descriptive, but still point out something that the buyers really have the right to know if they happen to have missed it. So stain noted, discoloration noted, period. Speaking of adjectives like big, small, whatever, just as a side point, I like to say that adjectives are what you might call the friend of advertising, on flyers, whether they're, paper flyers or in the cloud or wherever they are. You can use adjectives like unbridled with like virtually no litigation. The house is beautiful, amazing, majestic views. Even though the views aren't that majestic, you can write that stuff down and nobody seems to do anything about it in terms of litigation. The opposite is true in the disclosure arena. Adjectives should never be used, even numbers. So big, small, major, minor, fair, poor, long, short. We just don't want to use that. There's no upside to using an adjective. So 2 quick challenges. There's a lot of them. I'll just, for sake of time here, I never go over time and I'll be done. I think it's 24 after or something like that. So we'll move along quickly here. So just 2 challenges. The first one, I'll call it the ceiling fan challenge. So let's say you're in the living room and you looked around and you can't find anything to say. It looks great. Now, if it looks great, if you can't find any disclosures, that's what I like to refer to as a happy problem, if that's not contradictory. Usually when there's litigation, and again, this is the number one source of it, at least in California for residential agents, maybe a month or 2 or 3 after closing, the agent gets like a summons and will look at the address and say, oh yeah, I remember this place. This was just a nightmare property, a disaster waiting to happen. So when a room that you are in and that you have looked around adequately in, it looks fine, that's a good thing. It's a happy problem, as I mentioned, so to speak. So, but I want to kind of prove that I was in there. Not all homes have a living room. This one does. I want to say something. Well, first of all, we don't want to compliment the room. That's compliments for advertising. But there is a particular compliment that some agents or a lot of agents use that shouldn't be, because it is a compliment and it doesn't seem like it. It's like, well, kind of low level, like, this room is in fair condition. Well, the word fair means good, just like if the weather we're having here, at least in Southern California, we're having fair weather every day. That's what's in the forecast. That means good weather. So we don't want to say it's good because we're staying away from the good, bad, major, minor stuff. But you notice a ceiling fan, they, oh, good, I'll mention that. That'll prove I was here. Ceiling fan noted in the living room. But a ceiling fan is not a defect and it's not a red flag. So it really doesn't belong on the form and for this room. So you got to write something down. And I'll give you a suggestion on what you can write down when you don't want to mention it. See, if you mention the inventory, which is what a ceiling fan is, you now need to mention inventory in every single room of the house because you started here and you got to keep the trend going. So if you can't find anything, there's a really easy answer I'll get to in just a second. The other and the only other challenge I'll mention, I call it the spider web challenge. And that's when you can't find anything wrong. There's no ceiling fan to distract you. Some agents lower the bar from a meaningful, like red flag or defective condition, to something that is trivial. Now, they may not mention the spider web they see, although I have seen that, but they might mention a scuff mark at the baseboard by the door, or the carpet's dirty or something. These are not material issues. They do not affect the value or desirability of the property. They do not belong on a disclosure document. Nobody cares about them. They apply to every single property that's, I guess, over 6 months old or something. So what do you do when you're in a room? You've really been in there, and it does exist, of course, and you've been in there and you can't find anything to say. Well, statewide, the most popular term overwhelmingly that I've seen in my years of traveling around, or now zooming around, zooming meaning, the Zoom thing, not in my car, thankfully. Nothing noted is kind of the standard throughout California. It's not written in stone. It's not a contractual term. It just says there is a living room. Not all homes have them. This one does. I looked through it. I don't find anything to note. Now, the only objection I hear to that is when the home is in such ideal condition that you just can't find anything anywhere, and that, which is not bad. That's, you just looked around. You think, well, if I have nothing noted, just over and over again, it's going to look like I never even showed up at the property. And there is a way around that I'll get to in a second. So defects, red flags on the visual inspection. Words really make a difference. I love this sign. If you read down, you matter, don't give up. If you read across, you don't matter, give up. So it depends on how you read things. So words really make a difference in that case, and also in disclosure. So let's resolve the nothing noted issue. Like what you might call a perfect home. You wouldn't write that down, but it seems like it is. And they've taken really good care of it. And you can't find anything to say, but you want to have something on the Avid to at least demonstrate that you did show up, rather than just the nothing noted everywhere. Well, here's a way to handle it. Here in Southern California, and most of California actually, just about every house, regardless of price range, and there are some exceptions, has, like you see on the left, stucco siding. Now, if you ever have to make or want to make a disclosure about the siding and there's something wrong with it, it's better to use the term exterior siding rather than stucco. But anyway, most homes have that. And then concrete or cement driveways, walkways like sidewalks or patios, poolside. I think we all know this. It is impossible to find these surfaces at any home crack free. They're hard surfaces, and they crack just because of the nature of soil or something here in Southern California, well, statewide. So they're not necessarily problematic, but they're kind of everywhere. You can see them at just about any surface. It's very rare to see a driveway that has no cracks. Now, looking at the left picture, a lot of agents will write down something like normal settling cracks noted at exterior siding. Well, bad word normal, terrible word settling, because that's a geotechnical term. We should never mention it, never even say it out loud. And if they're kind of in this range, which really are not problematic, then an expression like some cracks noted at exterior siding and backyard patio. This will apply to 99% of properties. And you know that you really were there and you did observe it anyway. I love the word some in disclosure, because if you give a number, the number can be challenged. Like there are 3 small cracks on the living room wall. Well, we don't want to say 3 and small, but the buyers move in, they'd say, well, you said 3. I counted, I can see 5, and that you get into this discrepancy. That may be a little thing, but it starts something. And when things start up, they can, what else did the agent get wrong or whatever, and they just add to the list. So some is a nice nebulous term that means more than one, kind of generic. And that's at least demonstrating that you were there. If you're wondering where to write it down, I'll put my high-tech arrow there. There it is on the left. On the Avid, this is a little section here that is rarely used and maybe not even noticed. But if you don't have anywhere else to put it, or you want to make it kind of a overall collective property-wide disclosure, you could write it there. Other observed or known conditions not specified above. And if you can find something to say about the laundry room, whatever, or the kitchen, or just 1 or 2 things inside, low level kind of disclosures that nobody's going to do anything about, it shows that you were at the property, you got around outside, inside, and it works really well. Okay, here's a technique on how to take you're doing your Avid thing, your visual inspection, either side of the transaction, and you are really not sure how to word something. You've got the rough draft down, but it's too wordy. It's too long. It's got some words in there that maybe aren't good in terms of lawsuit prevention. Here's a technique where you can take that and in just like 30 seconds, turn it into an ideal disclosure. It is free of charge. You don't have to download an app. It takes like a half a minute or so to do. So I'll use myself as an example. Let's say I'm at a property. Let's say I've got the buyers and I'm upstairs. I've done the 2-story home. I've done the upstairs. And now I'm downstairs. I've done everything downstairs. I know the sellers are coming home in just a little bit of time. So I kind of want to get out of there. And I notice, so I'm in the kitchen, my last stop. I notice a couple of stains like this. I'm thinking, well, what am I going to say about this? It kind of looks like a mold thing. And if it is, it could be something really bad behind the wall. That could be very expensive. I don't want to ignore it, but what am I going to say? Well, you don't want to stand there for 20 minutes deliberating. So here's the technique. It's very kind of old-fashioned, but it works. Whether like a little notepad, scratch pad, physical piece of paper, or on your phone, laptop, whatever, apply it to anything. You write down, it's not on the Avid, it's just your rough draft. So for me, my rough draft would be, it looks like there are 2 small black mold stains there. And I've jotted that down. Let's say I've done it on a piece of paper. I folded the paper, put it in my pocket. I'm done with the visual inspection. I leave the property. Later on in the day, I'm at my real office or my car office or some office. And I take that piece of paper out and I just proceed to cross out every word that I can, such that it still makes sense in the English language. I don't have to say 2. These are all basically adjectives. Don't have small, no colors, never write down the word mold, as I mentioned. All I've got left over is stains noted. Then I get out the actual Avid and I write down stains noted. Took me seconds to do. It's just a really simple way of getting rid of adjectives that you wouldn't even otherwise notice. I've seen this practice in supermarkets. Now, I live in San Diego. I do a lot of things in the Central Valley, Central Coast, Northern California, Bay Area. So I have to change the name of the supermarkets because, Vaughn's down here is Safeway up there. So since we're, I think, all in Southern California here, I'll go with the real thing. I think Vaughn's has this express lane, 15 items or fewer. That's usually where I go because I'm, usually in a hurry, probably like you are. Ralph's does something different. Now, they don't have Ralph's up north, but they have it here, of course. They have express lane, about 15 items. It's positively ingenious. Now, in the former one here, I have never seen a fight break out, unfortunately, But I have seen a little bit of arguing going on where somebody will say, hey, look at the sign that says 15 items or fewer. I've counted what you've got 22 things in your cart. And there's a little verbal scuffle, but no more than that. But when the sign reads this way, nobody's saying anything because 22 items is about 15 items. It just takes the controversy away, and you don't have litigation in real estate without a controversy about a difference of opinion. And so a disclosure like this is too detailed, very common, but too detailed. 2 cracks noted in the living room wall at noted in living room at north wall, and 3 cracks in south wall. There's just too many details here, more than we need. So the numbers can be debatable. Now the buyer probably doesn't have a compass they're looking at to get the north and south, but even sometimes that can be off a bit. So why not just get rid of those words? I have them underlined there. And this will all be in the notes. Get rid of them and maybe use the word some cracks noted at living room walls. Nobody will disagree with it. The buyers now know that that's the case. But if they're picky buyers, they're not going to be able to pick this apart and create a problem because there's nothing to pick apart. It's just true. There's some cracks there. And you do not need on the Avid to isolate where each one is and geographically place it. It's not required, so you don't want to do that, in my opinion. So it's kind of like the about 15 item approach. Okay, let's go. Here's some advice. Oh, by the way, also in the chat room, if you have any brief questions that are not complicated, like an estate sale and all kinds of people involved. If it's just a real simple disclosure question, a couple of times before in the next 20 minutes or so, I will look at that chat room, and then you can always, if I don't mention it again, you can email me anytime. There's no cost at all, and I'll answer your question. If you work for a company, I'll try to answer your question. If you work for a company, I like to copy in the broker owner so they know what I'm saying and that sort of thing. But I do that every day, so I'm glad to do it. So never complete the Avid during the home inspection. There's a reason why. By the way, you only got so much time. Let's say I've got the buyers, and after this the Heritage Escrow seminar today, I've got an appointment. The deal comes together. Great. There's 10 offers on the home, and I and my client prevailed. But it's going to be a short escrow, and I've got to get out there as soon as I can to do the Avid. On the listing side, you can do it anytime, but I'm with the buyer, so I've got to get it done. Well, got to make sure that you do not do your Avid inspection at the same time when the home inspector is there. That's assuming that the buyers are having one, which is usually the case. And by the way, just a side point, home inspectors in California are not licensed. 32 states, we're not one of them, but 32 states license them. A lot of agents, mainly for buyers, although in parts of Northern California, it's for both sides, but mainly down here. They'll make a recommendation somewhere, the buyer's agent. I recommend that my buyers obtain the services of a licensed home inspector. There are no licensed home inspectors in California. And this will be in the notes. It's better to substitute words like professional home inspector, qualified home inspector, but not licensed, because we don't have that here anywhere in the state. But anyway, you've got to get out there. You probably have maybe a short escrow. You've got to get out there right away to do the Avid. The listing agent's already probably done the Avid, so they don't have to worry about it. But you do not want to, when you find out from your buyers, I called, XYZ home inspections, they're going to be out there Monday morning at 10. If there is any way humanly possible for you to get into that property and do your Avid before the day of the home inspection, and if it can't be done until the day of, and the home inspector's getting there at 3 p.m., if you can get there at 9 a.m. and you put in the date, of course, and you have time in, time out, when there is a different date on your Avid, compared to on the home inspection report, it's clear that you were not there, not following the guy around and that sort of thing. But anyway, home inspectors have a much higher standard, a much more, I would say, stringent standard of care than we do. They go in the attic, we don't. They go, if not a lot of crawl spaces in California or Southern California, but there are some. They don't go under the property, or they have a, well, they do go under the property if they can climb it, but they usually can't. They have a little tractor thing that goes around, that sort of thing now. But anyway, and they move pictures and paintings. Sometimes they look under throw rugs, and we don't do any of that. So let's say I can get out there in the next day or two, if that can be done. So let's say I'm there by myself. Sellers may be home, but I'm doing it by myself. I'm in let's say the master bedroom. Well, just in this photo here, I don't see anything to disclose. I'm not going to move the bed out of the way. If it was a tile floor and there was a throw rug next to the bed, I'm not going to look under it. And there is no way, absolutely no way I'm going to look behind that flower painting, or is it a photo? No, it's a painting, I think. But the home inspector might. So if I say, well, 2 birds, 1 stone, home inspector's going to be there Thursday, I got to show up anyway. I want to bring my buyers, which is really good if the buyers show up. Buyers show up, the chance of litigation drastically drops. So if they can get there, you want to be there too, but sit it out, let the buyers do whatever they want. But if you happen to be doing your avid at the same time, when the home inspector might move that picture out of the way, and behind that picture is something like this, bad news, major disclosure, kind of looks like a mold thing, could easily turn into a lawsuit. But when I'm there by myself, I cannot see it. I'm not supposed to be able to see it because I don't, within my standard of care, I do not move paintings and pictures off the wall. So I have, in theory and usually in practice, no liability at all. And even if I do the avid at the same time the home inspector's there, but I'm not following the guy around, I can always be accused of it, especially if it's a high-end property. There's a lot of money involved. Somebody's going to show up in court and say, I just popped into the house and I happened to see the agent in the master bedroom when the home inspector was there, all that sort of thing. So if the dates are different, you would have no disclosure for that. So my position or my suggestion is always complete the avid prior to the home inspection. Not a lot of repairs are being negotiated now because of our seem to be unending hot market. So, but when things change a little bit, or maybe there's special circumstances, and there are going to be some repairs negotiated where the sellers will agree to fix some things or have somebody fix them, still you want to do the avid at your very, very soonest opportunity on the buyer side, also on the listing side, but you have more freedom at that time on that side. If there are amendments or things to be added later, you can do that by addendum and all that sort of thing. And then when there is a home inspection, as I mentioned, it's very important that you attend it. And it's extraordinarily important that your buyers attend it. They can do whatever they want. They often sort of follow the home inspector around. It's better for you to, go to the family room or kitchen and just, sit there and get some work done. Okay, let me quickly look at the Q&A. There's a question. This is a good question. I'll answer briefly. Are home inspectors certified in California? So I'm looking for the word certified. Yes, they are, but they're not certified by any government agency, including the state of California. So since there isn't any licensing here, there are private organizations that have no legal authority at all. One is American Society of Home Inspectors and CREA, California Real Estate, whatever. There's something called InterNACHI, and I forget what that means, but home inspectors can get professional certifications. It's very good if they do. They have to pass tests and do peer review. It's a really, really good thing. Just don't use the word licensed, because that can be misleading to a buyer. You can say certified or something, that would be all right, but just not licensed. Okay, a couple of things on the new RPA. By the way, the vast majority of the RPA is not on this topic. It's about the transaction, the escrow, the the lending part of it and so forth. And it's not about this, but a portion of it is. And the new one, and make sure, of course, that you are using the, I'll get my little arrow going here. There it is. If you all know this, I realize, but every RPA in use right now must be 1221. Otherwise, essentially, it doesn't count or is invalid. But here's a couple of things on this topic, just to bring to your attention. In the notes that you'll be getting, I have the place in the RPA where these appear, like the number and the letter and all that. Keep in mind that in California, every single home is by default sold in as-is condition. The RPA refers to it as present physical condition. Now, the misunderstanding here, largely by the buying public, is that an as-is deal means the sellers, usually it's an older seller, they don't care how long it takes to sell their home, they're not going to fix anything, it's just take it or leave it. But that is not what as-is means in the RPA. As-is means the home is being sold in whatever condition it's in its present physical condition. This is what it's like now. And that means exactly the same thing as is. Where this can be a problem is if you have a yard sign and the agent puts as is as a sign writer, giving possibly the impression to the buying public that this is a different kind of a transaction. And it isn't a different kind of it's the same as every other one. So you got to be careful about that expression. It's really, since all homes are as is deals, it's kind of meaningless. So you don't want to make it a distinctive thing. When you know that somehow that somebody that is in the Megan's Law database is in the neighborhood where like your buyers are going or moving to, it's a tough issue. I have in another seminar, I have a whole section on this, on how to navigate through that. But just very briefly, in the RPA, it states neither whatever seller nor brokers are required to check this website. That's the Department of Justice website. So based on the RPA and setting a complicated subject kind of to the side in terms of just what we're told, it is a good idea to never look at that website. That's basically what it says. You're not required to. It's not part of your job as a real estate agent. You're protected by the statement in the RPA that states it just like that way in quotation marks. A lot more can be said about that and navigating through it, and some verbal things that could be mentioned without documentation and so forth. But anyway, just be aware that that's what it says. And just one more. It states in the RPA that sellers can personally perform repairs, or the repairs can be accomplished through others, meaning anybody they want to. So if you're representing a buyer and if they want to have the window screen replaced and that's agreed to, well, who cares who does it? It's not a big deal. You can do it over if you want to, if you don't like it. But if it's a more significant repair, something in the electrical panel, maybe a upstairs plumbing leak that's active, keep in mind that if you're representing the buyers and you would like to have a qualified person actually take care of this, you need to specify it in the request, like licensed plumbing contractor, licensed electrical contractor, if it's a more sophisticated, higher level kind of a repair. If that is not mentioned, the sellers can follow the RPA to the letter and do it themselves, or have the 14-year-old kid next door do it. So like all bets are off on that. So it's good to specify a certification or profession if you think it's necessary for that repair. So a couple things on that. And also just keep in mind that the transfer disclosure statement was also revised in 1221. So make sure that you have the 1221 date on that. All right, a few more things. Let me quickly look. I'll just one more time look at a question. Can you compare the listing agent's Avid when you go do your Avid? I think it's a good idea. Yes, you can if you have it. I think it's a good idea. Just do it on your own, because it's possible they already disclosed it. I don't need to, or they've worded it wrong and you don't catch that and you word it wrong, whatever. So I would say don't look at it, is my advice on that. Okay, let's see what I got. No, let's talk about social media real quickly. I don't speak a lot about it, but there is a little bit of it, a portion of it that does apply to my topic. So I'll do this quickly. It's about posting things on Facebook. Maybe you've got a blog, and there's a whole bunch of other platforms. I just have some of the more popular ones. The big deal on this topic of disclosure is the legal doctrine. That is, I shorten it a bit. It actually would say no reasonable expectation of privacy. So as an example, if you were at a Target or Nordstrom or some store that sells clothing, you want to try something on, you go in one of these dressing rooms and you shut the door, you see the word yes below that. There is a reasonable, legally, a reasonable expectation of privacy. Nobody can see you. The mirror is not, it's a two-way, two-way mirror. There's no cameras. If there's a security camera, it's blocked. It's a private area. But when you leave the store and you're out on like Main Street, USA, or walking through your neighborhood or in your driveway or anywhere else, there is no expectation of privacy. So when it comes to social media and like blogging, there is no reasonable expectation of privacy. So anybody can look at it, anybody can benefit from it, and anybody in the legal profession can use it against you if they can. Now, here's a key question to ask yourself to make this short. There are these weekend seminars that by companies that do, how to get more business in social media. I don't cover that part of it. They can be really good to go to. They're usually 2 days at some nice hotel or something. But when it comes just to disclosure and staying out of court, here's some really good advice. If you are about to hit the button on Facebook or the enter button, or you're doing a blog, and there's something in the content that you think, I don't know if this really should be said, or I wouldn't want it seen by too many people, or if it ever went to court and they had it on the big flat screen TV, I would be uncomfortable or squirming in my seat or embarrassed. Then ask your question with this question: how would my post look displayed in a courtroom? If it wouldn't look good, do not post it or take that out. That's the whole thing when it comes to this, my expertise or this topic. So let me give you an example. Up in the Bay Area, the agent's not in the business any longer, but it wasn't because of this. A prolific blogger. And he actually, I already did. We're repeating this. Let me get here. Okay. He actually wrote down, I would like to see all low credit score buyers sent to an abandoned desert island. You think, oh my gosh, how could anybody do that? Well, that's what he blogged. No expectation of privacy. It went out. He had a big audience. Some of his audience were low credit score buyers. They freaked out, and lawsuit time and all that, he lost. And so that would be an example, maybe an obvious one, where even if it's part of a blog or part of a posting, you'd say, it didn't look good. I would be uncomfortable if everybody saw it, or a attorney saw it, or a judge saw it. Judge Judy saw it or something. I better take it out of there. And so how would my post look displayed in a courtroom? And on this topic, look to the right, depending on how old you are. That's all. That's with that Porky Pig, I guess. That's all, folks, on that one. Okay, let me talk. I think in the ad that Heritage Escrow put out, it said I was going to talk about investor clients. So I want to make sure I get that out. So let's say you have an investor client, or maybe that might be your whole book of business. You may have several of them. And typically, they're buying a property, especially with the market now. If they can get it, they're buying it, and they're maybe fixing it up a little bit and maybe not too much, and putting it right back on the market. So investor clients, nonetheless, have the same disclosure responsibilities as sellers who've lived there for like a long time, but they haven't lived there a long time. And often, if they're doing a lot of properties like this, they haven't lived there at all. Sometimes they may live there for a month or something, but often not at all. But they have the same, they're a seller. It doesn't make any difference if they're investor client, investor seller. They're a seller. Sellers have a responsibility to disclose the condition of the home. And the court doesn't care how long they've lived there or if they have ever lived there at all. It can apply to absentee owners who are getting rid of their properties in different communities and, just retiring or something. Well, they haven't lived in it, the property, or maybe haven't for a long time. So the block of disclosure that a buyer usually gets from a seller who's lived there for like 10 years just isn't there at all. There's a way to make that up. Now, here's an example of going to into court where the investor client has sold the home, the buyer sue because there was like no disclosure. And you have the judge, just to kind of make this pictorial, saying to say Mr. Investor client, to pick somebody, saying, your buyers have moved in. The home that you sold them has got flooring problems. There's some substantial roof issues. It looks like there's a mold thing going. They have somebody checking that out today. You didn't tell them anything about it. Nothing. So here's a stock photo, but it's very similar there. The investor client said, "Oh, I'm sorry, Your Honor, I never lived there." And the answer, I guarantee you, will be, "I don't care if you live there or not. You sold them a home. They just paid, $1 million for this," or whatever it happens to be. So the finger pointing starts, and the attorney for that investor buyer is going to be looking for somebody else. And sometimes that somebody else might be you. So if you are obviously in the transaction, you're representing the investor client. Here's some wording I have in the notes that you might want to use. We normally just recommend, and it's even optional because it's already in the fine print everywhere several times, that buyers get a home inspection. We rarely do it for sellers, but when your seller is an investor client that knows like nothing about the place, this is a great thing to have in the file, and make sure you can verify that they have received it. That's easy to do. That's explained in the notes. Agent strongly suggests that the sellers obtain a professional home inspection report as an additional disclosure to the buyers. Since they will probably be providing no disclosure at all, the buyers are probably going to get their own home inspector, so they'll have two sources of a lot of information rather than one entity, the seller, providing them no information at all. And on the transfer disclosure statement, additional reports, that's where you would write it, say additional, this is what the seller fills out. Additional inspection reports or disclosures. And so if they've had, I'll just use a name, the XYZ inspection company do it, they would just write in there, see, XYZ inspection company's report, whatever, as an additional disclosure. The buyers are probably going to have somebody else do an inspection, so they get twice as much information. But the main thing, if you're representing the seller who's never lived in it, is they have admitted, I don't know anything about it. So I'm going to have a professional come in and provide as much disclosure as possible to my buyer. I owe them that. Saying, I'm sorry, I never lived there doesn't really work too well, because they can also do this. So this wording will be in the notes. And the buyers then have, like twice as much information as they would probably ever get. Let's see, about 5 minutes here. Well, I'll do a couple of short ones, and then we'll wrap it up. I'll wrap it up. Stating the obvious. Before I do this, I'm sometimes asked, like, let's say the home is right next to a golf course, or Interstate 5 or the 805 is like almost in their backyard. You cannot miss it. They can't miss it. Those things that are obvious that might affect the quality of life, good or bad, need to be disclosed when they are just blatantly obvious. Even if they're around the corner and it could have, like there's a school, elementary school, you can't see it. They've never, let's say it's in Del Mar, to pick up spot. And there is a elementary school, but you can't see it from the property. They're from out of town. They're just looking at the property, but the school's around the corner, and they're going to hear the bells ringing for classes, and they're going to gridlock in the morning for drop off and gridlock in the afternoon for pickup, and the band practice and all that stuff. Those things need to be disclosed. But sometimes when they're really obvious, or like across the street, and the buyers have been there and looked at whatever, they still need to be disclosed. Here are just some funny signs I found. Frozen ice, I like that. The best ice I have ever found is frozen. I'm glad they let us know there are some steps here. And this is kind of wild. I actually have seen this. This is a pizza box, open box before eating pizza. So this has completely changed the way I've been eating pizza over the years. I'm glad they let me know. Okay, so this is a picture taken in the South Bay of LA. It's like Torrance, Hawthorne, by LAX, that area. There's a lot of oil there. I know that's a big topic now, but whenever I've seen this picture or I'm doing a seminar in that area, I think, wow, look, all this space. If I owned it, I'd have houses built there. But there's actually more money, depending on where it is, in the oil, not in the houses. So let's say you have a buyer looking at, the 3 houses back there on the left, the one on the right with the kind of bright Spanish tile roof. And the buyer has, maybe from out of town, never seen this, never seen an oil derrick. They kind of hung 2 visits. They've looked over the back wall, seen them. They make some noise, not a lot of noise. Well, you think, well, this is so obvious. I don't have to disclose it to them. Doesn't make any difference. No matter how obvious it is, you have to. And I'll give you a clue as to how to do it. House here, they can't miss the school, makes no difference. There's still a disclosure. This is up in LA. This house is pretty darn close to Interstate 10. Obviously will affect them. And whether it's by a golf course, and that might be a really nice thing, by a freeway, which might not be so nice, they all have to be disclosed. Let me just mention, because I won't be able to get to it later, a way to do that. When there's something near the home, and let's say it's a fairway home, and that's kind of a nice thing, but it's right on the golf course. A way to do that, and I do have this in the notes, is just to tell them what's there. Do not make a list of what may bother them about what's there. Like the golf course right on the fairway, they can't miss it, but still, once they move in, the landscape crews start their tractors and mowers up at 5:30 in the morning, and that bothers them. Or errant golf balls bang in their house. Maybe there's a lot of coyotes around or something. I got a question about coyotes. I'm going to mention, we have a lot of coyotes here. I'm going to mention that because my buyers are moving from Chicago. I said, oh, okay, that's interesting. And they have a little pet. We don't want them taking their dog on a walk, their little tiny dog, and they've never even seen a coyote. I said, okay, well, you're going to mention rattlesnakes? Going to mention tarantulas or black widow spiders? You're going to mention birds of prey like hawks or owls that come down and pick those animals up? Where are you going to stop? You'll never stop. A freeway, there's noise, there's vibration, there's gas fumes, there's diesel fumes, there's blown out tires that are like missiles. You will never make a list long enough. So the key to disclosing something that's near the home, and near is up to you to decide, no number of feet or yards, is to simply tell them what's there. This home is adjacent to a golf course. Now, everything that could occur to them because of that golf course is encapsulated into that disclosure. This property is adjacent to a freeway. Everything that could bother them about being there is in that consummate disclosure or composite disclosure. Everything is there. So that's another topic. But anyway, quick story. I'll end with this. This is up around Sacramento, a little east of it, on the way to like Truckee or something. Elderly buyer. To think that I was 95, probably the last home he's going to buy. He looked from out of town. He looked at it 3 times. And he told his agent, I love the fact that there's this vacant lot behind my home. On move-in day, he realized that the vacant lot was actually a cemetery. Now, some people wouldn't care. Some people would. I know all the jokes like quiet neighbors, people are dying to get in, and a whole bunch of them. Anyway, so he said, I never would have bought this home if I'd known that. Of course, the agent said, you were here 3 times, you looked at it. He said, well, I didn't have my glasses on. Yeah, I'm 95, give me a break, whatever. So he sued, he got some kind of a settlement. So when something is near the home, as obvious as it still needs to be disclosed. Something like this would just simply be, there's a cemetery near the property or in the back of the property. Don't mention anything about what may bother them because the list will never be long enough. Just mention that it's there. That's just an example. So yes, disclose the obvious. Now, if you see a train this close to a house, just give up. I don't know what you would say there. But anyway, you can see I have a whole bunch of other stuff here. And this is only one of many seminars, but let me just mention my email there again in the chat room, disclosureinfo@aol.com. I think I am the last remaining member of AOL, but I'm still hanging on. And then thank you, Heritage Escrow, for inviting me. I will turn it back to you and wish you all a pleasant day.
Thank you so much, Robert. And I love the disclosure about the pizza box. I will definitely remember that moving forward.
Right.
But we really appreciate you being here with us today. And to everyone who joined, thank you so much. The Heritage Escrow team is here if you need anything, and we hope to see you all in escrow soon.
Okay.